everybody, and welcome back to another ASMR video here on the channel. Today we've got another sort of one-off exploration type video. The previous one we had a little explore of some of the most interesting abandoned places in the world. Well, today we're getting a little bit scarier, and we're going to be looking at the alleged most haunted places in the world. We have a list of around 20 here, and just like the last one, I'm going to slowly narrate through them while images and potentially videos play on screen, and we kind of explore and learn about these places together. So hopefully you do enjoy this video, and I reckon let's waste no time. Let's take a look at location number 1. So we begin in Eastern State Penitentiary in Pennsylvania in the United States. Built in 1829, Eastern State Penitentiary is a former prison in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's known for being the very first prison of its kind to introduce solitary confinement, or what they used to call the Pennsylvania system. Prisoners were sent to solitary during this time as a form of rehabilitation. They would be completely isolated, living alone, eating alone, and even exercising alone in their yards. When an inmate left his cell, a black hood would be placed over his head to assure he remained in confinement. Due to this harsh approach, many prisoners were driven to insanity, and as a result, the Pennsylvania system was scrapped in 1913. From then until 1970, it was used as a regular prison and held the likes of Al Capone and the bank robber Willie Sutton. Reports of the paranormal have been going on since the 1940s, but ever since the stone prison was abandoned in 1971, paranormal experiences have seemingly increased. Reports include shadowy figures that seem to quickly turn away when approached, a dark figure that is occasionally seen in the guard tower, an evil cackling is heard coming from cell block 12. Shadowy figures have been seen sliding down walls in cell block 6. Ghostly faces have been witnessed in cell block 4, and strange sounds such as disembodied footsteps, distant talking, and banging of cell doors have all also been heard. Next up is Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky, again in the United States. Waverly Hills was originally a 2-story wooden building that was opened in 1910. However, the building you see today was constructed in 1926. It served as a tuberculosis hospital throughout the early to mid-20th century, when the disease was at its worst. It is believed that as many as 63,000 patients died there. The death toll and the supposed mistreatment and questionable experimental procedures on patients are all recipes that may be behind one of the most haunted buildings in the whole of the United States. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium has built quite the reputation over the years, as more and more people are allowed to investigate the premises. This has thrown up some incredible evidence over the years. It is featured on shows such as Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, and our very own Most Haunted. TABS captured a figure on their thermal imaging camera that seemed to be walking across the hall. The figure was about 3 feet tall, and they later found out that the ghost of a young boy named Tim had been spotted there before. There are vast amount of varying reports, including full-bodied apparitions, fleeting shadows, screams from empty rooms, footsteps, sudden cold spots, choices among many others. Moving over to Australia now, with the Monte Cristo Homestead in New South Wales. The historic Monte Cristo Homestead in Junee, New South Wales, is regarded as the most haunted location in Australia. Its reputation stems from several tragic events that have occurred there since it was built in 1885. From its construction up to 1948, the Crawley family owned and resided in the property. During this time, the family witnessed many deaths, including the tragic death of a young child who was dropped down the stairs. A maid to the family is believed to have fallen from the balcony, and a stable boy burned to death on the property. A mentally ill man named Harold was chained up in the caretaker's cottage for 40 years. He was found curled up next to the body of his mother and sent to a mental institute, where he died shortly after. The tragedy doesn't end with the Crawleys. After the house was left in 1948, it was taken over by a group of caretakers, one of whom was murdered in the caretaker's cottage. Again, hopping countries to South Africa, to the Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town. The Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town, South Africa, was built in the 17th century by the Dutch East India Company. It's the country's oldest colonial building, originally serving as a replenishment station for ships passing the treacherous waters of the Cape. The first reported paranormal occurrence was when the apparition of a tall gentleman was seen in 1915 on one of the castle's ramparts. This man wasn't seen again until 1947, when he was seen regularly over 2 weeks. He would be seen jumping off the side of one of the castle walls and walking between the bastions Leerdam and Orange. One of the most popular stories associated with the castle involves the former governor, Peter Gisbert van Noot. He died on the 23rd of April 1728, the same day he had sentenced 7 soldiers to death after they were caught attempting to desert the military. It's believed one of the soldiers placed a curse on him and demanded he come to watch the execution, which he didn't. Later that day, Van Noot was found dead, slumped over his desk with a look of terror on his face. Another famous haunting is the Lady in Grey. She has been witnessed running through the castle, holding her face and crying hysterically. However, since a woman's body was found during recent excavations, a ghost hasn't been reported. There's also the ghost of a black dog who has been known to pounce on unsuspecting visitors, only to then vanish into thin air. Okay, coming to my country, England, with the ancient Ram Inn. Built in 1145, the ancient Ram Inn is believed to be the most haunted house in the entire British Isles, and perhaps the most haunted house in the world. The tale of child sacrifices, devil worship, and evil spirits are behind the terrifying happenings in this building. The inn was built on the intersection of 2 ley lines, which many people believe is a conductor for spiritual activity. In addition, an ancient pagan burial ground is said to have resided in the property over 5,000 years ago. During its time as bed and breakfast, people would often flee in the middle of the night, often seeing full-bodied apparitions in their rooms, the feeling of being touched or pulled, disembodied voices, and just the general sense of evil. John, the previous owner, now deceased, of the Ram Inn, reported that on his first night in the house in 1968, He felt a presence grab his arm before being dragged out of bed and across the room. John had since found evidence of devil worship and ritual sacrifice. He found 2 child skeletons underneath the staircase, as well as broken daggers. Owners and visitors continue to experience hauntings and attacks to this day. I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like DGF, who are like British YouTubers you may or may not know, I feel like they might have stayed there, or it might have been a different pub, I'm not sure, but the name certainly rings a bell. We next move to Fort George Citadel in Canada, Nova Scotia. Labelled as Canada's most haunted historic site, the Halifax Citadel has received hundreds of reports of ghost sightings over the years. Situated at the summit of Citadel Hill in Halifax, Nova Scotia, this star-shaped fort is almost 300 years old, with the original foundations being built in 1749 and reconstructed in 1846. Staff and visitors have reported several apparitions walking the grounds here. One particular visitor witnessed a soldier in uniform walk into one of the rooms in the old prison area and vanish. This is a common theme, with many reports centered around apparitions. Other ghostly figures that have been witnessed include an older man, a woman, a man in a red cloak, and an older lady who has been known to show herself in the mirrors. The feeling of being watched is a common complaint, as is the sudden feeling of nausea, sudden gusts of wind in closed-up rooms, furniture moving, doors banging, and on occasion, people have been pushed by an unseen force. Staying in Canada, we moved to the Banff Springs Hotel. The Banff Springs Hotel in Alberta, Canada was built over 125 years ago by the Canadian Pacific Railway as a luxury stop-off point for train travellers. Don't let its picturesque surroundings fool you though, as it's rumoured to be one of the most haunted in the country. Terrifying reports include sighting a bride who fell down the staircase, breaking her neck after panicking when her dress caught fire. Her apparition has been seen on the stairs and in the ballroom dancing, with many reporting the flames from the back of her dress. The main story that locals tell is that of the family that was murdered in room 873. The door to this room has since been bricked up, but the family that lost their lives in this room are still seen to this day, often in the hallway outside the room. Perhaps the most popular of all the reports is the former bellman Sam McCauley. He served at the hotel during the 60s and 70s and is still seen today. He likes to help guests up to their rooms dressed in his 60s uniform, often turning on lights and opening locked doors. If you try and make conversation or tip Sam, he vanishes. Chateau de Presa in France. Originally built in the 11th century as a castle by the Counts of Anjou, Chateau de Presa was rebuilt in 1502 by Charles II, the Duke of Brissac, who gave it its name. This noble castle is the tallest in France and it exudes old-world charm, but one of its past residents has shocked more than one visitor. A double murder in the 15th century within the castle walls has resulted in one of the more famous ghosts of the Chateau de Presa, that of the La Dame Verte or Green Lady. The current residents have become accustomed to her roaming the rooms, but she has scared many guests. She is often seen in the tower room of the chapel, wearing her green dress. What What's terrifying, however, is her face. If she looks at you, you'll see that her face has gaping holes where her eyes and nose should be, resembling what a corpse would look like. As well as her sighting, her moans are also often heard throughout the castle in the early hours. Moving to Borgvatnet in Brastgard, Sweden. Borgvatnet is a small village in northern Sweden. It is renowned for having one of the most haunted houses in Sweden, the old vicarage, which was built in 1876. The first ghost ever documented at the vicarage came in 1927, when the chaplain Niels Hedlund resided. He reported many strange happenings, including one particular encounter with something paranormal. He was on his way up to the attic to gather his laundry when he witnessed his laundry being torn down from the line by an unseen force. Rudolf Danken, a priest who lived at the vicarage during the 1930s, saw an older woman dressed in grey appear in a room. He followed her as she walked away, but she vanished in front of his eyes. In the 1940s, Tangton's successor, Otto Lindgren, and his wife said they had several paranormal experiences, including unexplained sounds and moving objects. On one occasion, a woman staying in the guest room was awoken in the middle of the night to see 3 older women sitting staring at her. That is so tapped, like, if that happened to me, I literally don't know what I would do. She quickly turned on the light, and they were still there. However, they now appeared blurry. The current building is serving as a restaurant cafe as well as a guest house. If you dare to stay the entire night, you'll receive an overnight stay certificate to prove it. Oh, I feel like that would be a banging ASMR video, don't you? Like, ASMR, but I'm in the most haunted house in Sweden, or most haunted house in England. Could you imagine? Would it go off? Anyways, moving on to Babbenhausen in Germany. Babbenhausen Barracks, that is. Now a museum, the ghost of World War II German soldiers have been seen in uniform. Lights are known to turn on and off by themselves, and voices are heard in the basement. German commands are often heard being shouted out in the middle of the night, and disembodied footsteps are a common experience. Soldiers who have visited the museum and picked up a telephone have reported hearing a woman talking backwards, and it's not clear whether it's German or English. In the town of Babbenhausen, a witch was allegedly burned at the stake sometime in the 19th century. Her ghost is said to have seduced and killed several German soldiers. Moving to Indonesia now, to the Lawang Sewu in Semarang. Lawang Sewu, meaning 1,000 doors, was built in 1917 by the Dutch East Indian Railway Company. During World War II, the Japanese occupied Indonesia, and Japanese forces took over Lawang Sewu. When the Dutch retook Semarang in October 1945, Dutch soldiers used the tunnel underneath a building to sneak into the city. A struggle ensued and numerous Indonesian soldiers were killed and 5 employees. The basement of the B building was used as a prison, where many people were treated harshly, with many of them being executed. Lawang Sewu is believed to be the most haunted place in Indonesia, with many tourists visiting the beautiful building to hopefully catch a glimpse of the paranormal. Among the many ghosts that have been reported here, the most popular and often cited spirit is the Dutch woman. she had committed suicide there and was captured on film during a TV program. Headless spirits are known to wander its corridors and grounds, and the basement in B building is believed to be haunted by a kuntilanak. On to the next one. We go to Mexico, Island of the Dolls. Located on Lake Texuelo in Xochimilco, near Mexico City, the island of La Isla de las Muñecas, the Island of the Dolls, is undoubtedly one of the strangest haunted locations on our list. In the 1950s, Julian Santan-Barrera moved to the island, despite being married to a young family. Julian was completely unaware of the area's dark history when he moved there to become a hermit. Legend says 3 young girls were playing near the water in the 1920s, when one of the girls fell in and drowned in the murky waters. Locals believed that the young girl's spirit had been unable to leave the island ever since her death. It soon grew quite a reputation as a haunted place, and locals wouldn't go near it at night for fear of what they may see. Julian claimed that a little girl began speaking to him as soon as he moved on the island. The girl told Julian how she had died and she was trapped there. He began to get the dolls for this little girl, often selling off fruit and vegetables that he had grown on the island, to buy old dolls for her to play with. Julian later told his nephew that it was becoming more difficult to appease the young girl's thirst for these dolls, with him seemingly worried that she wanted him to join her in her watery grave. The same day he had this discussion, his nephew returned to the island when he found his uncle face down in the canal. His body was in the same spot where the little girl had drowned 70 years before. Today, tourists to the island often speak of the doll's eyes following them. Others have reported that the mutilated dolls whisper to them, especially at night. Julian's ghost is also said to remain on the island, as well as the young girls. And our final location is the Akershus Fortress in Oslo, Norway. Built around 1300, Akershus Fortress is a medieval castle that served as a defensive stronghold for the city of Oslo. It has served as a prison during the late 18th to 19th centuries, with many prisoners dying during their imprisonment. Nazis also occupied the castle during World War II, carrying out many executions on the site. Akershus Castle is the most haunted place in Norway, with many ghosts to speak of. With its vast history, it's of little surprise. The most popular of all is the demon dog named Malkanisen, which guards the gates to the castle. Legend says that anyone approached by Malkanisen is sentenced to a horrible death sometime in the following 3 months. The ghost of a woman named Maldelgeisten is often seen within the castle, walking back towards her chamber. She appears wearing a long robe from the darkness and has no facial features. And that, everybody, is all we have time for this evening. That was some of the most haunted places in the world. Really interesting reading some of the stories and looking at some of the pictures there. If you did enjoy this video, then let me know down below whether you would like to see a part 2, because evidently there are no shortage of apparent haunted places around the world, so there's something you guys are interested in. But for tonight's video, that is gonna be that. So if you did enjoy this video and you're able to, then please do